What we're going to do today is take a brief look at Microsoft Publisher, just some of the basic stuff, but also a few tips that might be useful for creating quick publications. At any point, if you've got any questions, as always, just ask. If you come up with anything technical that will lead to a nice lengthy explanation, then what I might do is create a whole separate advanced course based on it. But to be fair, there isn't really much in the way of advanced features in Publisher. It's more about detailed features. I mean, the most advanced thing is probably creating a catalogue, doing a mail merge, but that's very similar to the mail merge process that you do in Word. However, what I'm going to do is take you through the basics, and like I say, at any point, just ask questions if you have any. So, this is Microsoft Publisher. The first thing to do is start a new document. Now, normally when you go in, it greets you with the new document screen. Because of the way that I'm sharing the screen, it makes it easier for me to have a new document on there already. But if I go to the File menu, then if I click like a minute, then I'll get a view of what it would look like to create a new document. And so there's all sorts of things here. I mean, basically, the big decision is deciding on the paper type or the paper size. There's a lot of documents you can sort of get started with, or templates, really. And if I go to more templates, there's a whole bunch of templates available, and there's even ones you can download from the Microsoft website to kind of push you in the right direction for creating something that's weird and wonderful. But if you know what you want to do, you just want to create a catalogue or a newsletter, or you just want to create a, I don't know, some kind of publication, then it's just a case of getting the right paper. And so A4 is, of course, the most common type, choosing whether you want portrait or landscape. But if I click on more blank paper sizes, then there's all kinds of weird and wonderful things. You've got the more obvious stuff like A3 and A5, but as we scroll down, there's different kinds of paper types. And so you might have things like, I don't know, particular manufacturers' paper types, or particular manufacturers' greeting card shapes. That wouldn't make sense. Anyway, manufacturers, that's it. So, but yes, there's loads of different paper types if you're doing weird and wonderful paper. I'm going to stop talking about that now because that's more detail than we need. So, so that's creating the new document to start with. Then you get your new document. I'm just going to use an A4 page. Nice and easy. And then I'm going to decide on a few things. Now, at the moment, there's nothing on that page because it's a blank new document. But we do have the margins. I mean, they don't actually print, but it just shows you where the margins are, just as a guideline. Of course, I'm going to adjust the margins, and that is done on the paper design, or page design. I'm obsessed with paper now. On the page design bit, and then here, if I click on the drop down for margins, I've got the usual sort of vague choices of wide, moderate, narrow. But if you go to custom, then you can put in a margin size that's specific. So pretty straightforward stuff, really, just deciding whether you want big margins or not such big margins. We can change the orientation and change the paper size and all that stuff that we've just said. But here is something that's really useful, and that's guides. Now, these are really handy. They're not just grown-up brownies, they're actually useful guides where you can decide where things need to line up. So, for example, if I was going to do a lot of pictures on a page and I wanted to make sure that they all align to the left in the same place or to the right, or I wanted to do a picture and a text box, I wanted to make sure the top of them lined up properly, I can just choose any of these built-in guides. None of them really, it doesn't really matter which one I go for. But if I choose that one, for example, it will dump these guides on here. And if I zoom in a bit, using the usual zoom in of control and mouse wheel, then here I can see the guides that is put into the document. Now, I can adjust these by hovering over any of those lines and dragging it, like so, and up and down. And these won't print out, but they will allow me to position text boxes and picture boxes into the right places, basically. If I want to quickly create another line, so for example, if I had a whole bunch of pictures that I wanted to align the tops of, what I can do is I can click on one, and rather than going up to the whole guide screen and telling you I want to put a guide there, I can just click on one, hold down the control key and drag, and then it'll leave the original where it is, and it'll give me the second one. So these are guides, really handy little things. They just allow you to get stuff positioned in the right places. And if you decide you don't want them, you can go to guides and say no guides. And then, oops, it's gone out again. So back to my main document. First thing I want to do is put a text box in. Now, fortunately, in Word, I've got a dirty great big pile of text, which I'm going to copy. Then I'm going to go back to this. So I've now got a load of text in my clipboard. Of course, you can import text, depending how you want it to come in and where you want it to come in from. There's loads of different ways of doing it, but we can, well, if you want to know more about that, we can talk about that later or now, or whatever, really. But for now, I'm just cutting and pasting. But first, I'm going to do a text box. So, and you better see the screen for this. Right, on the Home tab, you can say Draw Text Box, and there I can click and drag to draw a text box. Easy. Now, it's going to be no way near big enough for my text, but if I just paste it in there, like so, we can do just a regular paste. It'll come in pretty much in the format that it came out of the other system in. We can do merge formatting, which might work perfectly. It's best to test that one first. Or we can go with keep text only. Now, if you're bringing something in from a website or something from a very old document source, then that's a good way of going with it, just going for text only, because otherwise the formatting sometimes comes in a horrible way. But I'm bringing it from Word, so it should just be able to paste straight in. And it's just the standard Word test text. So there's a text box. I'm going to create another text box just to do something so I can get it out of the way and then it's done. And so two completely unrelated text boxes. But here, because this stuff is way too big to fit in that one box, there's a little thing here, a little indicator showing me that it's going to overspill. If I click on that, I get a nice little coffee cup. And I can go down to my next text box, click there, and then it spills into that one. And then again, there's another one there, and I could draw another text box and spill into that, etc., etc. Then if I edit one, so for example, if I were to delete a load of this text, where it says you can collapse, well, that's about right, yeah. If I delete this, that will now move up to about here, and then that will shuffle up. So it's like having a continuous box. Not very technical, but it's useful to know. So there's our text boxes. Don't want those, going to delete them. I'll delete that one, going to delete this one. What should I do then? I think I need to create some kind of publication. So I'll draw a whole new text box with a nice big title. So I'll make it fit roughly to the margins. Come on, something in a minute. And I'm going to make the text nice and big. All the usual font formatting tools that you'd expect. In fact, on the Home tab, it's got the font group there, which has got most of the stuff that if you're familiar with Word, you'll know how it works. And the paragraph formatting, again, it's very similar to the Word paragraph formatting. So I can make this centered, and I can make it big. Let's make it 8. If I actually select it, I could make it big. There we go. And bold. And small caps, because that always looks interesting. I don't think there's a button for small caps. But if I click on the flyout, here's the dialog box with all of the different settings for font formatting. And I can choose something like small caps, which makes it look like a more traditional newspaper title. So there's a title. Then I'm going to add another big text box. This one I'll put the big text in. This can go all the way to the bottom. Again, trying to keep it in line with the margins. Now, when you hit a margin, you can see, well, certainly down the bottom, you can see that margin there. And if I just drag down slightly to it, as I hit it, it shows you the line to show how far I've gone. And then that way, it helps line things up. It looks like I've overshot it, but I haven't. That's just because the box itself is kind of slightly around the outside of it, but the actual text is lined up with the margin. So again, in here, I'm just going to paste this text in. as the format that it came in. So I've got a title, I've got text. Now, of course, I need some pictures. So I'm going to put in a picture. Picture. So I'm going to browse my pictures, and of course, everyone's favourite picture has got to be the chicken. So in goes the chicken, like so. Then what I'm going to do is put another picture in there, and so a bit of variety. Let's choose the other chicken. Okay, so there's a whole world of picture formatting tools. As soon as I've got a picture selected, it comes up with a formatting box, and there's things we can do here, like well, one of the things I want to do first of all with this chicken is change its rotation. In other words, flip it horizontally so it's facing the other way. Yeah, that's better. I can do things like cropping, I can group stuff together. I can change where it appears in the sequence of things by using send backward and bring forward. Now that's really important because everything kind of goes on a layer, and if you've got text that's on top of something and you can't kind of get to the thing to bring it to the front, and it doesn't really make sense what's going on, then this is the tool that you'd use. You can click on the text box and say send backward, send it to the back so it's behind everything. So these are really useful. The alignment tool is pretty useful as well if you want to select a couple of items and line them up. Another thing to be aware of when you're trying to line stuff up is if I'm trying to line these boxes up and I can't quite get them to where I want. So these ones would be really easy because they're almost the same size. Well, they are the same size. But if I wanted to line that up with that and I didn't want to mess about with the alignment tool, I say mess about, it would take seconds. Align top. Yeah, that doesn't really give me good justification for the next bit. But that's not the point. If I didn't want to use the alignment tool, I can use shift and arrows. And what that does is it just nudges things a little bit at a time. So if I nudge it up or nudge it left or right, that's one of the things that's really handy when you've got a strange looking image and you can't quite get it right. So shift and the arrow keys will give you one little step at a time, and you can use anything, a text box or a picture item to do that. What else are we going to do? We're going to change the, let's have a look at the way the text is wrapping. Yeah, let's have a look at the text wrapping on this. If I click on an item, click on wrap text, this is all the classic options of how you want the text to wrap. You can make it wrap a little tighter. On a square box, it's not going to make a massive difference. If for some reason the text is overlapping on the picture, it will be because either the picture went on first and the text went on afterwards, and then it didn't realise it needed to be set to one of these settings, or it will just be because this is wrong. But basically all you do then is you get to the picture and you say either square around it or tight, or you can put it in line with the text. You can change it to the text running through it. It should be okay on this, but it was not really what I want to do. I mean, it looked like that. Which one am I on? That one. Yeah, it would look like that. It wouldn't look like that at all. I could just choose that, and that still doesn't look like it anyway. We'll ignore that then, because publisher clearly is. So yeah, I'm going to just have the text tightly wrapped around it. There are tools to draw your own box around the item so that you've got your own shape rather than just having a square edge, or rectangular in this case. Now, what else was there to do with this? Text, pictures. Let's see. How to make it more interesting. Well, first of all, we could put a big title in there. Let's put that nice and big. As always with these font sizes, if the font size you want isn't there, if that's too big, which it isn't, that's no good. That doesn't demonstrate it, it's a perfect size. No, if that's not big enough, then that one's too big. Then of course you can scale it somewhere in between. Actually, 52 might be better. No, that is too big now. 50. Actually, what I want to do is I want to change the spacing on this so it fills out the whole thing, but it's not so big that it wraps around. Now, in the wacky world of desktop publishing, or publishing generally, there's three things I recall from 20 odd years ago. The last time I got somebody a newspaper from using their boards to using computers. The three things to remember were leading, tracking, and kerning. That's about as technical as my knowledge of publishing gets. Mm. So leading is the gap between the lines. So for example, if we look at this, when you're creating a newspaper, it's all about getting rid of white spaces. So we've got these big gaps down here and lots of gaps between the text. So if we change the leading to a smaller amount, I don't think it even calls it leading in Publisher. If you're using something like Quark, it'll call it leading because that's all about the publishing, oddly enough. But if you want to, in Publisher, you'll just call it line spacing. If you want to reduce the line spacing, then you'll get more stuff squeezed on the page. Then you've got tracking and kerning. Now, these are very similar things, and they're mildly technical. Basically, tracking is the space between words, and kerning is the space between letters. So here, I've got a lot of white space, but I'm kind of convinced that that would fit if I could just get the whole thing on there. So if I reduce the kerning and the tracking, then I could probably get the whole title in there. It's probably completely the wrong way to go about it. I'm going to start by making it smaller, and then I'm going to adjust it. Now, an easy way of getting to the character spacing is just click on the drop down of character spacing, and then here I can either change it using the simple options, or I can go to more spacing, and then from here I can adjust things accordingly. See, the scaling will stretch the text, but that's probably not what I want. What I want to do is reduce the amount of space between letters. So here we've got a section called kerning, and it says fine-tune it by reducing blah, 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 blah. So if I now change it so that the kerning is a lot smaller, let's apply that. Ooh, see, it doesn't look bad. In fact, it looks tidier, if anything. And then the tracking up there, I could knock that down a little bit as well. That might look a little bit too close. Oh yeah, that's no good. Oh, no good at all. That's about right. Okay, that's about right. And then I could increase the font size and get more on there. So that's a general gist of line spacing. It's not right. That's not perfect, but I could just, I'm not going to spend ages making it perfect because that's wasting everyone's time. Anyway, so that's one of the things of character spacing. Obviously, line spacing is a whole different kettle of fish. But it's a bit of a dull document here. What I might decide to do is select all the text and use good old-fashioned justify so that it stops the edge from being jagged. And there's still a bit of a jaggedy edge going on there. I could, if I wanted to, get rid of the hyphenation because that sometimes looks awful, or I could adjust the hyphenation, but I think in this document it's probably about where it should be. The only other tip I can think of to make something as dull as this look slightly more interesting is to highlight an area. So if I go to my text and find an interesting quote, let's have a look. That'll do. Right, let's take that. So I've copied a bit of text. Now I'm going to do another text box. Just put it here. Boom. Paste my text in. Then what I can do with this is make it italic, make it bold, make it a lot bigger. No, I said a lot bigger. And then put quote marks around it, because this is what people do in newspapers, and it looks almost interesting. And then here again, I could tinker with like things like the line spacing is way too big there. So if I drag box, I drag and select, and go to this and adjust the no, not that. Go to the line spacing. Can't see it on that page. I have to do it on paragraph instead. I can change it here, but if I just go straight into line spacing options, and then I can reduce it using this tool here. That's better. I can make text a bit bigger then. You can't beat having bigger text. And then if I get rid of those that hyphenation, which is done on the formatting tab. Yeah, it is. Yeah, excellent. You can adjust how it hyphenates by adjusting the size in the hyphenation zone. But I'm just going to turn it off because I don't want it to hyphenate in this box. And then I'm going to adjust the box to make it look better. There we go. That is as close as I can get to providing a mildly interesting looking page. So, what else there to say about basic stuff? That's about it, really. Do you have any questions?
A couple. One of the questions that I have is that when you're actually producing a document that's going to go onto a printer's, they want something on it like bleed lines, you know, like. And obviously, when using Publisher, I can see the margins are there, but that's really just to give me the gap around the actual page that I'm creating, and not the actual bleed lines that the printers would want, which is a kind of runoff point, isn't it, for the, you know, a sort of an over margin and an additional margin, isn't it, really, a bleed line? Is there any way that you can put that together so you can see it, obviously, when you're creating a document, so you know you're bang on with that as well?
Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, one way of doing it is making. I mean, there might be a better way of doing this now in Publisher, but to be honest, I've not looked for it recently. But what last time I looked at doing that, the way to do it was to have the wrong paper size. So basically, you choose a paper size that's a bit bigger, but you'd set the margins to where you want your paper to actually be. And so, if, for example, you was wanting to print right to the edge, then you could just set your margins so that within it you've got an A4 document, but outside of it you've got something 1 centimetre all the way around bigger than A4. That works quite well if you're wanting to do something that's completely graphical and you want it to bleed over the edge. I'm not sure if there's a better way for something like that. I should probably investigate it, because by now they really should have a tick box where you say add this extra zone.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious because obviously it takes a little while to do a bit of customization, doesn't it, really, as well? And, you know, then as well, I mean, I was thinking that the rulers are very helpful, the guidelines, should I say. I call them rulers, where you put those green lines in. But it takes a little bit of time to actually, you know, look at obviously all of the dimensions and the measurements, the millimeters, and then, you know, make it right, doesn't it? So I just thought it's something that's always essential if you're outsourcing printers, really, because they want to be able to see it and you want to be able to see it. So, you know, that, as I say, it's been built with precision. And yeah, just, you know, I've seen that it is available if I was using different software, but I haven't been able to see if it is something that's available with Publisher. And yeah, you're the expert, Glenn, so I thought that would be a good one to ask you. You know, is there a way, you know, an easy way? The other thing is looking at this document, where you've got text, there's places where you've got gaps. Sometimes you get that when you try and justify things with Word as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, as I say, when you're looking at presentation, that doesn't look, you know, overly good, because like you said, it's all about obviously getting the right dimensions and the happy balance, you know, and making it consistent.
Yeah.
So obviously that's occurred here in a few places. So, you know, I can see it, for example, you know, top right hand corner of your blue and green chicken, there's a little space there that's got no text in it. There's a few areas. Is
So
there any way to change that?
yeah, I mean, the having the text justified isn't ideal, but all you do, the best way to do that is first of all decide how close you want things together. And so if I go into the spacing options, I mean, well, first of all, before even doing any of this, if this was a professional document, which it isn't, but if I was trying to do it professionally, I'd use columns, because having one column down the page is not a great way of doing it, because you almost guarantee white space that way. But on newspapers, they'll always have multiple columns, just because that massively reduces the likelihood of having big white gaps. And so that'd be the first thing I'd do. And I'll probably have several columns. And then I would want to reduce the tracking. So if I go to the tracking here and manually knock it down to about 90%, I can have another look at it. It's like, okay, well, yeah, that's not damaged it too badly. It's readable. I'm not going to mess with the kerning, because I think that would screw it up a bit. I might make 92%. So, yeah, I think that's about as close as we can go. But there's still these big white spaces. And so the best thing to do here would just be to take this box and make it the size of a chicken, and then create another one next to it. And then, oops. And then take this one, fill your coffee cup, and then suddenly it looks a little bit more like a professional newspaper. Obviously our boxes all look a mess, so what I need to do now is send this to the back. You can't do it from this page, you have to do it from home. I'm surprised it's not on the menu actually, but if I go to send back, then send back again, could have used a drop down to send it to the back, would have been quicker. But I can see it's not lined up with that, so what I could do is I could drag it properly, or I could just use, no, just resize the box at the same place. Where does that box end in? Oh, there, just under the title. That makes sense. Yeah, right. So yeah, so now that's kind of cut down on a bit of it. The next thing would be to reduce the hyphenation zone. So here we've got a lot of white spaces. And if I were to go into format and then go to hyphenation, it's set to automatically hyphenate. But if I reduce that figure, it will hyphenate quicker, basically. This can sometimes really go horribly wrong. But we'll find out in a minute. Words like the being hyphenated. It's not massively improved things. But another thing, of course, is taking off the old alignment, justifying alignment stuff. Where is it? It's give me the correct option. If I just put it back to normal left alignment, it's less likely to space things out. So you can do various things, but generally the way of getting rid of white spaces is to use columns, and lots of them. Which is why we look at contracts, the small print is always in loads and loads of columns.
Yeah, I'm doing all the right things, I think, because sometimes it's about playing around with the words. Even you know, kind of have a little look at the text and you think, how could I, say the same thing, but perhaps make it a little bit more concise. And you might drop a word out of it and bang on. As I say, the job's it makes all the difference. And the difference that you're looking to achieve. So yeah, it's really, really good, really, really great. As I say, what you've done there as well. If I was building a document, probably I would have like a block of words and then different, the pictures separate to that, because I think as a person you want to keep a flow when you're reading.
Yeah.
So obviously you probably wouldn't put a picture in between, and I think when you put a picture in between the text, it can probably all go terribly wrong as well, because it's having to go round. Can't go, we can go forward, backwards, but really you can't go over it or under it unless it's a watermark.
Yeah,
But if it's anything that you need to read, then generally, as I say, I think the human eye needs to sort of obviously keep focused, and it needs to flow well and go from left to right and across the page and so on. So that does help, doesn't it? Really, I mean, I think where you put pictures in the text, that's asking for spaces
For
and
trouble.
gaps and words like trying to fight their way around something. So, but that's brilliant. That's absolutely great.
I mean,
Thank you, Glenn.
if you do want to put a picture in, this is kind of the way to do it, to put it in a column, and so that it goes down, and then you can maintain your reading flow. Because if you do it something like this, that's horrible. I mean, that looks all right if you're not reading it, but if you read it, it's kind of like, oh, that's not how I was expecting the text. And it's like, oh, and it's all about columns. The other thing is, if you're producing something like a flyer or something that you want to look pretty, which is always really difficult because I say it's really difficult unless you're one of these people who knows what they're doing, like some couple of my colleagues, well, the media department, I mean, they can whip up stuff that looks amazing anytime. If I was to design a flyer, it might do exactly what I wanted it to do, but it wouldn't look great. And if the longer you look at it, the more you convince yourself it does look great, and then you can sort of show it to someone and they go, "Oh, okay." But the trick I was taught was if you're doing something that's graphical and you're not really sure how good it looks, is print it out and then hold it up in front of a mirror, because as soon as you see the mirror image of it, sometimes that just gives it away. If it looks good, it'll look good at any angle. If it looks dreadful, then you're really reminded how bad it can look. so it's about, I think it's really just about not overdoing things, like not mixing fonts and all that kind of stuff, but being objective about when you look at a publication. So there we go. I'll find out about these the best way of doing the bleeding, and I shall let you know next time I see you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow's presentation is about WebEx, which might be really useful to lots of people or might not be useful at all, depending who wants to tune in. And as always, if you've got any questions, just ask about anything. But if you want to see any of the previous videos, then feel free to look on YouTube and please subscribe. I have to say now, because that's what people say on YouTube. But there we go. Okay, well, have a nice day. And thanks, Miles. Take care. I'll see you next time.